Hey everyone, this is Andy Hall, and with me today is Ian Harris.
Howdy.
Comedian,
Yes.
skeptic,
Something like that.
funny man extraordinaire. Now you all may notice that Sam Slade isn't here because Sam has problems with the internet tubes. He needs a new router. The router pooped, if I could use such gross and crass language, scatological language such as that. And before we start getting into the nuts and the bolts and the pecans, maybe, I want to show you a small 60-second film I did a few years ago. I'm going to do it right now.
You're not going to do it, are you? My son died for you. It is only fair that you give the same. Are you not devoted to me? You claim to be my loyal servant.
I'm in, but you can't back out like you did with Abraham.
Dad?
And there you go. That was Father. A little bit of Old Testament wisdom in the modern day, my friends. That's what that is.
Nice.
Yeah. It was fun. I did it with a couple of local guys here in Quincy, which is just south of Boston, south of Boston. And that was my kid.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was a family affair.
It was a family affair. Yeah. I had to explain. And, it was a moment that I got to teach some biblical literacy too, because my kids are being raised as atheists.
Right.
And so the only information that they're going to get about the Bible is stuff that they read on their own or stuff that they hear from me, or maybe some minor, crap that they hear in school, which is going to be filtered in a certain light. So it was a good moment for me to talk about it with my kid, and it was a lot of fun doing it.
It looks pretty cool. I mean, you should do a whole series of those from different Bible.
Oh yeah,
that'd be funny.
Right? Yeah, it would be. It would be. I think it would be very enjoyable.
Right.
And maybe one or two other people in the entire internet universe would appreciate it.
Right.
Everyone else would be like, oh well, So, dude, how are things going in California? How are things going with you?
It's good, except for California's going crazy right now with this coronavirus stuff. But other than that, we're doing good. We had a good for the first 3-4 months, we were the lowest, not by numbers, but by percentage of, we had like 15th, 20th on the list of overall numbers, but we're 40 million people here. So it was like, it was like it was a tiny percent of people that had it, and everything was good and everyone was doing the right thing. I think Governor Newsom has been doing a great job. I think where he screwed up is that he listened to the pressures of all the what I call the white privilege protests. And when they're like, oh, we need a haircut and a beer. And then, and he was like, all right, well, we'll do a slow open because we're doing so well. And, people you hear, oh, we're opening, and they're like, woo, mask off, let's go, let's go kiss strangers, and everyone went insane. And now it's through the roof again. And I mean, we're not the only place. I mean, obviously we're not as bad as Florida numbers wise. Yes. They're like, we shattered a record yesterday, 12,000 people. I'm like, well, there was 15,000 in Florida in one day, and they're less than half the size of California. So I would say they shattered the record, but 12,000 is ridiculous. And, we had the most people, that's a California record. Yeah. 12,000 in one day. And then we had can't remember how many, 200 dead or 100 dead or something ridiculous like that yesterday. 65. I don't know. It was another record. So it's like,
Yeah.
I just like people are like, oh, it's over, and they just take off their mask and whatever, and yeah, when you've got 40 million people and 13 million crammed into one area, like we saw in New York, you're gonna have an explosion.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with that right now. So
how are the ICUs doing over there?
I hear everything's filling up again. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been saying this since day one. I don't. Well, I mean, I do get it. I'm not saying I don't understand that we have a complete moron, narcissist idiot in the White House, but I don't get why we, as a nation or as the Senate or the Congress or somebody, I don't remember the president having this much power that if we had something like this, the CDC and these other places should be their own entities, and they should go, hey, we're going to go and do this. The Congress should be like, we're going to vote on making tests available. Like, I don't know why the president is all of a sudden now can just go, no tests, or what? Like, when did that become a thing? We have a representative government that has agencies that do certain things. We hire an agency to act as the CDC. Let them do it. We hire an agency to pass laws. Let them pass laws. Like, I don't know why. I mean, why he is just able to go yes, no. But I mean, I've been saying this from the beginning. If we would have just, first off, stayed home for 1 month, and I mean stayed home, one person from your house designated to go to the store with a mask on and some gloves and some hand sanitizer, go to the store once a week and buy your stuff and whatever, and stay home for a month. There's just zero way this could have spread.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot catch a virus sitting in your house with the people that don't have the virus in your house. You can't.
Yeah.
And if it takes a month to go through, or 2 weeks before you realize you need to go to the hospital, everyone after a month would either be in the hospital or through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a fact. We wouldn't just it would linger in the air for a month until you go outside and jump on you. Like, so if we could have just done that for 2 months, we could have just stayed home for 2 months. And I know everybody was freaked out at the beginning saying, why don't we, or how are we going to pay bills and do this and this? It would have been so simple if the president would have said, okay, look, we're going to stay home for 2 months. We're going to get rid of all mortgages. We're just going to defer them. 3 months of mortgages. We're going to put them at the back end of your mortgage payment. You got 3 years. You've got 3 years and 2 months now, right? You got 10 years. You got 10 years and 3 months now, whatever. Do that. Pass that on to rent. There goes 50% or more of our bills monthly, right? Then you could pass a small stimulus package to give everybody $1,000 or $500 a month to pay for some bills. And then why didn't they fucking deploy? Oh, excuse my language. Sorry.
That's okay.
Why didn't they deploy the DPE, the DPA, the Defense Protection Act, and they could have taken the military, which we love, the military, and sent them to every major city and even smaller places. They could have gone to the parking lots that are empty. They could have gone to the Targets, the Walmarts, all the places that were closed down, turn those into either tent hospitals outside or mini hospitals inside. They could have built 200, 300, 400, 500 ICU beds, right? Like they could have built beds with ventilators or at least oxygen masks or whatever. We could have trained them to do what they need to do, have a couple doctors on staff at each place, and then have a military trained to do the other stuff. All the testing could have been done there. If you feel you have the symptoms, you drive to this thing. There's a parking lot. You get your thing. And done the contact tracing. If we would have had tests, contact tracing, and then you free up the hospitals. For regular people. No, you don't go to the hospital for COVID. You go to the Walmart parking lot where there's now a tent hospital run by the military. And then the other thing you could have done is once a week they could have had the military drive their trucks down your street, and in each neighborhood open up on Fridays or Mondays or whatever and give everybody a ration of toilet paper and block of cheese and whatever and anyone who needs that stuff can go over, get their toilet paper, get their stuff for the week so they don't have to go to the store, or get just some basic essentials. Here's some, like you said, cheese and toilet paper, canned vegetables or whatever. Like, that would have been so simple to do, and it would have cost us a fraction.
Yeah. Well, I really like the idea about doing these field hospitals, right? Doing
Yeah.
field hospitals specifically for people who are diagnosed with COVID-19 or who may have COVID-19.
Right.
You can just get screened there because people are afraid. I'm afraid to go to the hospital.
Right.
I'm afraid even to get like a flu shot when flu season, in September.
Right.
I'm making plans with my ex-wife to say, hey, when it's time to get the flu shots, we have to be the first ones in there with the kids.
Right.
So that we're not just waiting.
Yeah. And also, I mean, what about all the people who need to go to the doctor who can't, or what about all the people who have other things, heart problems? And so we're taking up all these beds for something that is going to be this temporary and that's going to, that is super contagious that we don't want other people to get. And meanwhile, there are people who need to go in for other things that can't because the hospitals are full. And then people are complaining, you hear the right wingers complaining that I've seen pictures of the hospitals and there's nobody there. They keep saying they're full. There's nobody there. It's like, yeah, dummy, there's nobody there because they're not allowing anyone in. They're keeping it open in case of. So, and you're looking at areas where, this area, like, why are they laying off doctors and getting doctors? Because there's no work. Yeah, there's no work because those doctors don't do COVID.
Yeah.
They're doing the other stuff, and we're not allowing regular patients in right now because of this other thing, because we don't want to cross-contaminate. So if we just kept the hospitals and doctors' offices for regular stuff and had COVID units elsewhere, we could schools are closed. We could easily turn a school gymnasium, turn a football field, a junior college football field. We could easily turn those into makeshift hospitals.
Oh yeah, easily
in a heartbeat. And again, we're already paying the military. They're not doing anything. We're not. I mean, we're fighting some ghost war somewhere, but we're already paying them. Why not just have them come and do work here? I mean, I don't understand it.
Yeah, the thing is, there's a lot of resources that we're not using, and the resources that we are using, they're just sloppy. It's just being used sloppily. So tell me, Ian, if schools open up, what percentage of students are going to fake symptoms just so they can go home?
100%? No. Actually, it's funny because I think the opposite is true. That the thing that people are ignoring. It's funny. So a little plug on my podcast today at noon Pacific. We are Ty Barnett and I are having on a teacher and an administrator. I believe I think she might be a principal here in California, to talk about what they're hearing about opening schools and what the pressure is. But I mean, the rule is at schools, you're not supposed to go, if you get sick, you're not supposed to go back to school until 24 hours after your fever subsides, right? That's the rule. If you have a fever, you have to wait until you have 24 hours of no fever before you can go back to school.
Sure.
I don't think most people even pay attention to that. Like, I think most parents are like, I can't keep you at home, go to school. And I think what opening schools will do is be a worse version of what we saw with what I talked about earlier with this opening. People are going to go, oh, I can go back to work now. Oh, I guess it's better now. So if there's an excuse, like right now, people are going, what are we going to do with not being able to go to work? What are we going to do with, and not everyone, but most people seem to be getting by. We're getting our unemployment. A lot of workplaces are going, okay, we're going to pay you anyway, or you can work from home. People are managing. I don't think most people can stay home for the next year and watch their kid. I totally get that. But I think that's the problem, is that what happens is once they allow their kids to go to school, those people are going to be like, just like when they're like, hey, we're going to relax and go to bars or open up restaurants. The next thing you know, people are at bars and they're partying and they're dancing and they got their shirt off and they're and you're like, whoa, that's not. We open restaurants to get something to eat, not to go to bars every night partying and getting sick and then having the COVID parties and all. And I think once you do that with schools, people are going to be like, oh, good, my kid's out of the house. And it'll be like, go, get out of the house so I can go to work. Go get out of the house so I can do other stuff. Go get it. And they'll be pushing their kids to get out of the house and go to school. That's what I think is going to happen. And
you're right about that, because people respond to incentives, whether or not those incentives are implicit or explicit, right?
Right.
So if you are implicitly given an incentive to send your kids to school so that you can continue with your quote unquote life, then people by and large are going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also whatever that psychology, that subconscious thing is that we think, oh, the government, like in one breath, I mean, 90% of the people I know, the government, blah, blah, blah. The government doesn't know what they're talking about. The government's this, the government's that, conspiracy. But then but then when the government says, hey, you can do blah, blah, blah confirmation bias, they're like, yoo-hoo, the government says it's okay, no mask. And it's like, and that's what happened here. I mean, it's exactly what happened here. It was like, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this. Oh, this is bullshit. The government doesn't know what they're talking about. The government's forcing me to do this. The government, and then government goes, hey, we're going to ease back and you can go out. Woo, thank you, government. No mask. I get to go party. And everyone went crazy. And we saw the numbers spike. And now the government's going, okay, let's pull them down. And they're like, oh, authoritarians trying to stop. And it's like,
you can see how people's cognitive biases and how our brains so don't work sometimes. Because there's this abstraction. You have to be able to do some kind of abstract thought to understand that things change.
Right.
That science is all about having these having these conditional truths. These conditional truths, and especially when we're in this kind of situation, there's something akin to the fog of war. Right? Is that no one really knows what's going on. And we're going to find out new things as we go through the crisis.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. That's the biggest thing that one of the bigger things I should say that I've learned in this is that the amount of people that don't understand how life works and how science works and how facts work is staggering. Like I thought for sure it was 10, 20, 30% of people. It seems like every other person I know, if not more. I mean, it seems like I can't turn a corner without someone going, oh, so we're supposed to wear a mask. Now we're not supposed to wear a mask. Then we were supposed to wear. These guys don't know what they're doing. Why should I trust them? Because it's called new information, you jackwad. Like, I don't understand why they can't figure this out. Like, it's the name novel virus. It doesn't mean that it reads books. Like, I don't know what... Like, it's just, it's crazy to me. It's like, yeah, we have new information. We change our guidelines. The original ones were based on an idea of what we think might be the case. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of it was overstepping to make sure in case it's worse, we'd rather err on the side of caution. So, and then when new information comes out, we go, okay, it looks like this, so we can do this. Ooh, that wasn't working. So let's go back to this. So sure, they don't know everything, but it's like, we're finding it out. We're finding it out by doing that. This is part of the process. But it's like this idea that now we should not listen to experts. I literally got into an argument with somebody, a friend of mine's friend, who said, talk about confirmation bias. I don't trust any, she was like not a right-wing person, like one of those super woke liberals that are against, like hippie types that are against the vaccines. And it was like, I don't do this and I don't do that. And I don't trust authority and I don't trust the doctors. And she goes, Western medicine, all this kind of stuff. And she said, well, she goes, I don't ever let my kid do any of this stuff. And she said, and the one time I trusted a doctor, that doctor turned out to be wrong. So, which never explained, what do you mean you turned out to be wrong? You mean you thought the doctor was wrong, or the doctor made a mistake, so therefore all doctors and all medicine is bad because you want it to be? And she's like, I don't listen to the experts. I listen to myself. And I'm like, what? How on everything? And then meanwhile, she went on to talk about how she self-diagnosed it. Because I said, well, I don't believe in antibiotics. And I said, oh, well, you will if you get a MRSA staph infection.
Oh, yeah.
And she goes, I've had one and I healed it on my own. And I'm like, then you didn't have MRSA because it would go sepsis and you would be dead.
Well, you'd be dead.
Right. And I said, and how did you diagnose that it was MRSA?
I was going to ask that, Ian. I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Without a culture, do you have your own bacteria culturing at your house? And if so, who created that culture kit? Like, it had to be somebody that inside. Or did you go to the doctor? Oh, I have a friend who so your friend visually looked at something and determined which type of staphylococcus it was and which antibiotics it was resistant to know that it was MRSA, not Versa, or just regular staph. Like, how did you know what it was? And how did you know it wasn't how do you know it wasn't a strep skin infection? Yeah. You can get a strep skin infection. You can just get a regular skin infection. Sure. You can, I mean, but this idea that, oh, well, I know that I had this and I healed it on my own. And it's like, you couldn't have known that without going to somebody. But again, when it fits their narrative, and this is every other person I meet nowadays, whether it's they don't trust Dr. Fauci, they don't trust the CDC. I mean, I hear daily, oh, so you trust the CDC and the WHO? Yeah, 90% of the time, yes. They are. Dr. Fauci is the world's leading epidemiologist. He's been in this business. He's been in this position for 40 years. Every single, from Ebola to H1N1, they were all handled by the same dude.
I would first question, and let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the WHO and the CDC are walking hand in hand about official policy regarding COVID. That being said, you're right. Dr. Fauci seems to looks at resume, a pretty responsible person and knowledgeable with what he does.
Right. Yeah.
So if you don't at least listen to him and think about what he says, then where are you getting your information? Because there's someone that you think is an expert somewhere in that decision tree of yours, right, in that flowchart.
Well, and also, so why did you trust Dr. Fauci during, like, you hear the same people say stuff about, like, well, how come we didn't have to close schools down for H1N1? Or how come we didn't have to close schools down for this and for that? Well, first off, those weren't as bad. We had 60 million cases of H1N1 and 12,000 deaths in America. So you can tell, if you know anything about the old maths, 4 million with 150,000 deaths is quite a larger number than 60 million with 12,000 deaths. So it wasn't quite as necessary for us to shut down. Second of all, probably one of the reasons that we had it under control is because we had a pandemic team, we had funding to it, and we allowed those doctors to do their thing. So if you're going to compare it to Ebola, one case that got one death or whatever, or you're going to compare it to H1N1 or any other, the 70s, the Hong Kong flu, whatever, you're going to compare it to any of those other pandemics. Well, then why are you now complaining about the guy who handled those?
Yeah.
Why are you saying and the only reason it's bad now is because he's not being allowed to do what he's doing. He's being contradicted by the president and hamstrung by the president. And they fired the pandemic team. That was one of the first things he did in office. So these are facts. We know these things. So you can't sit around and go, whoa, I can't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's doing. But yeah, he's completely hamstrung. He has no power to do anything. And then you're like, well, how come we used to do these things? Yeah. Well, why answer your own question?
I want to bring this back to the school openings again, too, because most teachers, a vast majority of teachers, are intelligent people who make good decisions. But, dude, there's going to be one PE teacher who teaches, I don't know, earth science, right? A kid's going to be sick in class. He's going to have symptoms. He's going to go tell him to do a couple of laps around the school, maybe a couple of push-ups. And that situation, it's going to happen more than once.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing is I know we also have to remember that there's a huge difference. And this is going to sound a little arrogant, but lots of educated people, lots of professional people are not very smart, or at the very least are not critical thinkers. I know super, super religious, superstitious, people that are nurses, that are teachers, that are doctors. I know MDs that I wouldn't trust to do a freaking algebra problem. You know what I mean? Like I really do. I know people that you go that, or you talk to them and you go, wait, I mean, look at these the MDs that were behind the pandemic, and you see that the lady in Texas at one of those white privilege rallies up there going, "I'm a doctor and it's a hoax," and you're like, and you look her up and you're like, yeah, she's a general practitioner with a license in Texas for 20 years, went to medical school, and is and believes that COVID is a hoax. So, that doesn't, there are teachers and there are nurses. I see nurses all the time saying, oh, it's all, like online, like, oh, it's fake. It's this, like nurses who are working there, because they also get sucked into conspiracy theories and religious garbage. And so, I
just want to give everyone a shout out. I want to give everyone a shout out in the chat because people are coming up here saying hello. And I want to say hello to Brain Bug Neil, the 604 Atheist. Ian, you may not know Neil, but Neil does this great YouTube channel where he talks to people about their deconversion stories.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And I believe he's interested in connecting with you, maybe having you on his YouTube channel.
So, yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely.
So you can see Ian's Twitter account there, Comedy Core, Mr. Neil, the 604 Atheist, right there, and you can hit him up on Twitter. He's also on the Facebooks, of course, Ian Harris.
Yes. I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah. You are ubiquitous. So getting back to your point about doctors.
Does that mean I'm see-through? Okay.
What's that?
Nothing.
So getting back about doctors, what do they call a person who graduates at the bottom of their medical class?
Doctor,
exactly. So you could be getting your medical degree from not a great school and graduate at the bottom of your class, and you're still a doctor and you're still out there practicing.
And also, I mean, there are sort of some people that are like, I always use this example, Ben Carson. From all accounts, Ben Carson is supposed to be a phenomenal neurosurgeon.
He is, yeah.
But if you look at his, reasoning skills and his education in other areas, the guy's a moron. Yeah. He's Forrest Gump with a neuroscience degree, or he's a neurosurgeon. So, and I've heard people, liken it to a car mechanic, where sometimes surgeons don't have to know anything they don't have to do a lot of the diagnosis or things like that. Or if they do, it's their one, this is my thing. And they've got a steady hand and and they know the routine. I do this, I put this together here, and boom, 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 this goes here, blah, 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 and he's done. And you can be really great at those things. You could take apart a carburetor and put it back together, and I could take a part out of a Mercedes and build a motorcycle, and I could do all this kind of sort of stuff. And I might walk away and go, how do I tie my shoes? You know what I mean? Because all of everything goes in. I'm really good at this one thing, and that doesn't mean, again, which is why you don't appeal to authority. That's why that's a logical fallacy. But again, people don't even understand when you're arguing with them. Like, someone will appeal. Well, I've got a doctor who says this, and you go, well, that's an appeal to authority. And then you, me, whoever, will appeal to not authority, but to authorities, the consensus. And they'll say, so now you're going to just believe like I've seen people say a consensus isn't science. Yeah, we know that because we understand science, but science comes to a consensus. It's not the consensus is what makes it science. It's the science that makes it a consensus. And the fact is that, yes, there's been times when the consensus was wrong. Yep. But for the most part, it was the scientific consensus that proved that it was wrong. Well, always that's the case.
Exactly. And the only thing you really have in this life is the best guess, right?
Right.
And I would want to put my money, the smart money, where the smart people are putting their wages, their wagers typically. So dude, tell me this, right? Because you're an MMA guy, and I've been thinking about this and rolling around in my head quite a bit, is that not only do you have the problems with us as a species with these gobs on our shoulders, but also because in a crisis, it's like being in the pocket, right? So you can have a lot of people who are good everyday life. They have their stuff together, right? But then they get in the pocket, and all of a sudden it's a whole different world, and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's Well, I'm trying to think of the MMA response to that. No, but yeah, I think we have that with. I mean, isn't that kind of? I feel like that's almost everybody, though, isn't it? I mean, isn't that kind of everybody on the planet has? But I think a lot of people, I find that it's the other way
some
around.
people are like, but there's, I mean, everyone, it's crazy times in crises, right? But then you have people who are like, let's say, bringing it to football, Tom Brady, right? Who's been training and knows his stuff, has natural gifts.
Right.
And you can see them. It's like, wow, really, really operates well under pressure, really makes fast decisions, but good decisions. And then you have a lot of people who are just lost and who would normally do very well.
Right.
But they're like, well, I guess vaccines don't work anymore. Or maybe I don't need a face shield.
Well, and I think, and also opposite. There are also people who don't work well anywhere but in the pocket.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah. There are people who are just wrecks in everyday life. And then the crisis comes. You look at someone like Ulysses Grant, right? He was basically was horrible at every single job he had up until he was in the military and being in charge of armies. Not a very good president either, but in the pocket, in the crisis, he was exceptional.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem is that the rest of us appeal to people that we see somebody who's like, we either see somebody who's together everywhere else, and we appeal to them when they're in the spot they're not good because we assume they're going to be good, or we find that one person who's really amazing at something and we appeal to them to everything else.
Yeah, well, that's the halo effect, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you're good at this one thing and all of a sudden people just assume that Justin Bieber knows something about epidemiology maybe, or how things work in general.
We're going to replace Dr. Fauci with Justin Bieber. That would be
Oh, yeah. Well, I hear he's a good Christian boy.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so he would be ideal for the job. Ian, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're on a timeline today. How long do we have you? How long do I have you for?
I think I got about like another 10 minutes.
All right, dude. That's great. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So I want to say hello to a couple of other people. Brainbug's always a great guy. He has a great channel about bugs. You might not be aware of that. But yes, if you're ever interested in anything like beetles, with horns.
I'll have to share that. My wife loves bugs.
Oh, really? Huh?
Yeah. Well, she used to be a science teacher, so she had got into all kinds of like all kinds of things, but bugs were one of the things she likes. She loves beetles and things like that.
Oh, very cool.
Although she hates cockroaches, I will say that. I don't know anybody who likes cockroaches, but they freak her out. But she like regular other things. I'm like, get it off me, and she's like, oh God, it's just a.
So my buddy was in the Peace Corps in Malawi back in the day. It was back in the 90s. And
that sounded like a line out of Airplane.
It does sound like a line out of Airplane.
I was in the Peace Corps in Malawi. Right. We bombed Drambuie at whatever. Anyway, sorry.
But he reported that he had an albino cockroach that he would only see it for a split seconds until you turn the light on and the cockroach would just run. But I've never heard of albino cockroaches, but I guess they may exist. You have albino snakes and different kinds of. I saw an albino squirrel. An albino squirrel once lived by me. Wow, I thought that was like weird.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think most species have some form of albinism. I know definitely snakes, lizards, reptiles all have. Back when I was younger, we used to have a male and a female Burmese python, and we had my mom and I the idea was to breed these Burmese pythons, but I don't even know if they're legal anymore. I know that in Florida, what is it with Florida? They let everything go, but I know that they're having like literally the Burmese pythons have taken over in some areas down there, and they get to be like 25, 30, 35 feet, and they can eat cows and shit. Like they're huge. And I know that it became a problem with them Burmese pythons running around, hanging out with the meth alligators, I guess, or whatever.
Sweet. So Brainbug is saying is that cockroaches are white right after they molt. So now I just learned something new. About cockroaches right there.
So your friend thought that it was albino because
he just thought because it was white, and he's just some kid from Sharon, Massachusetts, who's stuck in the middle of Malawi, and he's saying a white cockroach and thinking, hey, that has to be
Wow. And in reality, no, it's just being, yeah.
Yeah.
That I wonder though. I wonder if, well, I guess your friend would know, but no, it seems like, yeah, I don't know if bugs and insects are different, but it seems like most animal species have an albino version, right?
Right. That's how I understand it.
It's funny. There are certain places, just because of how gene pools work. There's certain places in the world that it's much higher. I don't know why this is off on a tangent here, but I have a friend who is I have several friends who are Nigerian, and my one friend said that it was in Nigeria or West Africa, wherever. But he said Nigeria, but he said that it's something ridiculous. Like every fourth or fifth kid is albino. He said it's really, and he ended up having an albino child. But he said it's one of those traits where it's like a recessive trait, but you and your wife or you and your husband might not be, but your chance is like 1 in 4 of having a kid that's albino. He said it's just very common in his area. And I don't know if it's all Nigeria or just where he was from. And then sure enough, and he told me that, and then sure enough, like a couple years later, they had another kid and it was albino. And he's like, yes, it's really common. And I'm like, that's so crazy. Cause I'm like, I've only met a handful of, people in my daily life that were albino. And he's like, yeah, no, every other person, it seems like where I'm from. And I'm like, that's crazy how gene pools work, right?
I had a guy on the Naked Eye podcast back in the day who is black, albino, and a comedian out of New York City. And
I actually knew a black albino comedian, by the way.
All right, so it might be the same guy. I forget his name. But his experiences were really brilliant guy. His experiences were that he got to hear all the horrible things white people said. And it was quite a tutorial.
Wow. That although that is very strange to me, because that's I'm not sure what's weirder, that people, I mean, that people are that awkward, that people will go ahead and just be like, well, you're white. Let me tell you, because no one's ever done that. I mean, yeah, I've had racist people say racist stuff to me, but I've never heard people go, all right, I want to make sure you're white. You're white? All right, cool. Well, because you're white, here's some racist stuff. But it's also weird that you'd be so dumb that you could look at a albino person and be like, well, he's white. So therefore,
yeah.
That's just weird, because it's like, I don't know. It's like, well, I find that strange that some moron just was like, oh, he must be a white guy that I can go tell racist stuff to.
All right.
It's weird.
Well, it is a crazy species, Homo sapiens. That's
yeah,
what it is, man. So hey, how's your gym going, by the way, dude? I know the last time we talked, I don't even know if California, are you guys allowing gyms to open, or is that back?
We opened for 2 weeks,
and
then we closed back down. And I mean, we were open for a month. They opened June 18th, I think. And then we closed down July 14th, but I didn't really open the gym until July 1st. Mm-hmm. I had it open, but we didn't have any classes. It was like, you can come in and work out and open mat and work out with somebody, whatever. And then in July I opened, but I made sure everybody had, which is my own thing. You're supposed to do contact tracing, no or limited contact, blah, 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 blah. I actually made sure that everyone who came in had to show me a recent negative test.
Sure.
Now, granted, like anything, you could be HIV free today, and then tomorrow go have sex with somebody, and then show me your test 2 weeks later, and I'd be like, oh, that's person's. But same thing. Yeah, you could have had a test from 2 weeks ago, and then come in and be like, and have contracted it in between. But I was like, okay, at least we're doing all the precautions. Plus, we're checking people who have had a test. So hopefully they've had a test, and since that time they haven't done anything stupid. That's kind of. But then everything blew up, and the governor shut it all down again. Now everyone's upset with the governor, which cracks me up. They're like, Newsom's an authoritarian. He's a Nazi. All this kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening. It has nothing to do with leadership at the top, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he has to do this. What else are we supposed to like? He's out there trying to shut down your thing because he knows you're a Republican. It's like, shut up! It's so annoying. I don't want to close my gym. I mean, we may have to close down permanently if we don't get something going on. Yeah. So it's like, my partners are wanting to they're like, why don't we close down? Because the weird thing is my landlord's trying to raise the rent during this. He wants, because our lease is up, so he wants to sign a new lease, but he wants to raise it like 35%. And I'm like, that's a giant rent increase. And he swears that he has somebody ready to move in to pay like twice the money. And I'm like, really? You have somebody ready to move in? He's like, oh, but I want you guys here, but I got someone, so we don't know if we call his bluff. But then the problem is, what do we do? Like, even if we close down and put all our stuff in storage, well, we have a really good deal where we're at. So are we going to be able to get, then we open up, we're going to have to do a whole new build out because it's not going to fit exactly the way. We're going to have to get probably new mats. We're going to have to build new bag racks. We're going to have to build a new shower that we just spent $4,000 to build 3 months ago to build a shower in there. So we're going to have to do all that. Plus we're going to have to find a place that rent is the same price or cheaper. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, is closing down for 6 months cost effective, or should we just pay the rent for 6 months from the loan we got and just sit with the gym not open? So it's like I've got a couple of partners. I run mostly everything, but I've got, background partners. Yeah. And, one is like, no, let's just do, two of us are like, no, let's just keep it and pay the rent. And the other two are like, oh, let's close down and reopen. And I'm like, I just don't know that we can do that. Like, I think it'll cost more to come up with a new place, tell everybody that we moved. So, because a lot of people will drive by and go, oh, they're closed down. Oh, well. And they won't even look us up to find out if we moved somewhere. You're right. People I find don't get their emails. We email everyone and say, hey, we're closed. And then the next day I still get 10 people going, are you guys open? Like, we sent you an email, 3 emails saying that we're closed. Like, so how are we going to let everybody know we relocated? What are we going to do for, I have no idea, but I kind of feel like, but I'm also not going to pay more rent while we're sitting around not taking in any money. Like, that's ridiculous.
I will say, I was talking with my girlfriend who's in pharmaceuticals. She does data analysis for one of the smaller, startup techs here in the Cambridge area. And she was telling me that what they're doing in terms of, now she doesn't work with COVID-19. She does oncology stuff. But from what she understands and what she's seen, there's been a variety of different companies who are really kicking it into high gear. And they're already on stage 3 trials, and there could be something, in December.
My wife also works in pharmaceuticals. I think her company might have been working on a vaccine at one point, but I do know that there's 2 or 3 companies that are in stage 3 trials. Yeah. I do know that there was a company somewhere in Europe that said that they think that they'll have a vaccine readily available by mid-fall. I think, we have to go through a little longer trials here. And I think that, then you got to get it ready. And then you got to make sure that the president doesn't block it because it's not American. Yes. I think that by the end of the year, I'm hoping that we have something. The thing that they don't know, I think, is that will it be something that you have to get a booster every 3 months? Will it be something you have to get a booster every year? The other thing that I'm reading which they all expected, but maybe not this quickly, is there's some evidence out there showing that the virus is already weakening.
No, really?
Which viruses do. Like after, like some of the colds we have now are, coronaviruses that used to be far more deadly, that over time being in the system, we still get them every year, but the virus weakens. Flus, same thing, like, H1N1 and these things, that they're not nearly as bad as they were when they first hit the market. So I guess there was a study in Italy. I don't know, how, if it was peer reviewed or if it was just looking at like data, but they're saying that they're finding that they think the virus is weakening. So maybe that mixed with a vaccine that like every 6 months you got to get a booster, I would be fine with. Oh yeah. You got to go in and we got to get a flu shot every year. So even if it's every year during the rough times, and then, even if the last 6 months, but that you're probably going to be pretty cool, pretty good, and not a lot of people have it, so you're not going to come into contact. And then every year when you get your flu shot, you get your COVID shot. Sure. I'd be fine with that. Like that would be great. So,
not dying a horrible death in an ICU or in a field hospital in the Walmart parking lot. That would be excellent for me, Ian.
It would be almost ideal.
Under the circumstances, that might be the best that we can hope for.
Yes. Well, shoot, man, I hate to have to leave you, but I actually have to get to the gym and do some stuff this morning, even though we're we are technically closed. Well, we're closed to the public and closed to classes. But yeah, I got to go
Right.
do some things here in the morning. But
Yeah,
let's do this again.
This has been a lot of fun. I'm going to close it right here when Ian leaves. Everyone in the chat, great for having you here. Hope we answered whatever questions or whatever comments you had. We'll be back next week. Sam will be back hopefully next week. And Ian Harris, thanks again. Where can people find you online, sir?
Yeah, so it's Comediocre, at Comediocre. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter. I mean, I don't really go on Instagram, but I go on those, but I don't go like Facebook is my main thing. My website is Ian Harris Comedian or skepticcomedian.com. And yeah, so find me and follow me and say hey and whatever. And yeah, if there is anybody there that also, I love doing podcasts and I love, so if you do have podcasts, if anybody, like you're saying, has some sort of show or podcast, I'm always down, especially if we're talking science or atheism or skepticism or mixed martial arts, whatever. And then myself and Ty Barnett, comedian Ty Barnett, we have a podcast called Critical and Thinking. And we do it live on Facebook, and then it goes on all the regular podcast stuff, iTunes and all that. And it's called Critical and Thinking. We record it live every Friday at noon Pacific.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, dude.
Yeah, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye. Take care, everyone.